Trigger warning. Please be advised that Locked and Loaded Diaries talks about themes of suicide, homicide, sexual assault, and other wrongful deaths. I'm willing to bet that you think most military deaths happen in the combat zone. Think again. Nearly 3/4 of all active duty U.S. military deaths between 2006 and 2020 occurred not in the war theater of Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan, but in places of no conflict. And of that 74%, 93% of deaths happened here on U.S. soil. My name is Kimberly Walker, and I'm an Army combat veteran. These statistics sent me on a goose chase about what was happening in the military and how did these soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines actually die? What did the military know about these deaths, and what were they telling these Gold Star families? Well, I went straight to the source. They have done all the legwork. Please join me and my battle buddies and Gold Star mothers, Terry Caserta and Heather Hedge Baker, where on every episode we will talk to a Gold Star family member and find out what happened to their service member versus what the military told them, and the justice that they've never received. Are you ready? Well, we are. Welcome to Locked and Loaded Diaries. Good evening, Locked and Loaded Diaries listeners. I'm Kimberly Walker here with my co-hosts Terry Caserta and Heather Hedge Baker. And tonight our special guest is Alita Bath. She is the mother of PFC Evan Bath. PFC Evan Bath, as you remember from last week's show, was one of 8 Marines and a sailor from the Battalion Landing Team, 1/4 of the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit, who drowned as their assault amphibious vehicle sunk near San Clemente Island off the coast of California during a training exercise ahead of a deployment back in July of 2020. He was 19 years old. The investigation report, as if you recall, if you were here on our last episode, was full of numerous failures, maintenance failures, leadership failures, not following policies and procedures. And it wasn't just a couple of things. It was many, many, many failures. Every single person who touched this situation messed up. And this started months before the deaths of these young Marines. I don't think anybody in that vehicle was over 24 years old. There were a number of maintenance failures, vehicles in horrible condition, not fit for operation, in need of repair, loose or missing parts in the vehicle, an oil leak that damaged the transmission, which prevented the engine from having enough power to pump out the water. As the more I read about this from last week's episode and this week's episode, I'm learning more about like the details of what was wrong with this vehicle, and it just blows my mind that this was allowed to go into the water where there was a potential of sailors and Marines drowning. It wasn't like this was a Humvee that, you know, if it ran out of, you know, if the transmission blew, you know, the vehicle will stop and then it's just not drivable anymore. I mean, this is a lethal machine that these kids were in. And I'm just thinking, like, why was all this stuff being pencil whipped? Because that's what, you know, there's paperwork involved. Were these leaders pencil whipping things in order to make themselves like look like they were mission ready, when in true reality they weren't mission ready? And if this is for training for deployment, why would you be pencil whipping things and saying you're mission ready when you're not ready to go on deployment, and then you're going to bring Marines over to a deployment with vehicles when no one's trained and the vehicles aren't ready? I'm just really curious to hear, you know, these are like my assumptions on why, you know, these oversights were overlooked. Checklist procedures were not followed by the crew or the unit leadership on the day of the accident. The vehicle's emergency lighting was not working, and there were no glow sticks on the hatch handles, forcing the men to use their phones for light. The vehicle commander did not order the troops to evacuate the vehicle despite the increasing level of water in the crew area. Once the water was at ankle level, the point at which they were supposed to start evacuating, the vehicle commander instead waved a distress flag for 20 minutes. The vehicle sunk after 45 minutes from when the leak was first noticed. As we talked about before, there were no proper safety boats on the water during the exercise, which might have been able to spot the distress that the AAV was in and to help evacuate personnel sooner. The only designated safety boat was another AAV that had personnel in it, which is not allowed. Report also stated safety checks and briefings that were supposed to be conducted that day by the platoon did not meet the policy standard. One of Alita's biggest questions was why procedures were not being followed and why there was such a rush to do a waterborne exercise for which the troops were not properly trained. Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Was this a dog and pony show? Were there leaders there that wanted to show off, you know, what they had in front of other leaders? I know that there were things that Carol, it's not Carolina. Caroliana. Is that what her name is from the last show? I messed it up last week.
Christiana.
Christiana. I'm already messed it up. There were things that she couldn't say about this that maybe you might be able to give us some insight, but in your story, Alita. But let's start from the beginning and let's talk about Evan and what kind of boy he was and the man he grew into and why he wanted to join the Marines, because, you know, this story is about him first and foremost. So the floor is yours.
It's my favorite topic. Well, first of all, he was my miracle baby. He was my only child. Whew, sorry. Didn't think I was going to get emotional.
You can cry on the show and you can drop F-bombs.
I'm one of those people, I don't like crying. So Evan was one of those babies. He was very sweet. He's very shy, he didn't he didn't connect with his peers as much as he connected with adults when he was a child. He was very precocious. And I remember one time he was about 2 years old. I was in my room and I hear this, ah! And I go down the hall and I stuck my head in the door and I said, "What's the matter, Evan?" And I'm so aggravated. It's not cooperating. He was trying to tie a shoe, 2 years old. He just, he would help anybody that he could. As he had been saving his money, he had about 450 in savings. He was in high school, and I asked him how much he had in savings. He didn't have any. He'd given it all away. All of it. Just given it away. Somebody needed books, and he said his parents wasn't giving him money, so Evan gave it away. I think he had a little crush on one of the girls that had helped him with some schoolwork, so he gave her 350. Somebody had given him $20 one time. We had a gentleman that came in from overseas, and we'd gone to church, and Evan turned around and put the 20 in the offering plate. He had a huge heart, and he loved history as far as ancestry type of history. And he had that in common with my mom, and he loved video games. So he kind of combined the two. And so he would walk in and I would be in the living room working. And you know, the cartoons where your eyes do the little circle things. Mom, in 1842, blah, 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 blah. I didn't know if he was telling me the truth or not. He was just spouting dates off. It ended up that became the thing that was our thing. We would talk for hours about it. He drew games. So he would draw these very, very detailed maps and create worlds, almost like a Game of Thrones type of thing, and create backstories. He held things inside. He was a little bit quirky. He wasn't a big socializer. In fact, Jack Ryan Ostrowski, who we also lost, I found out his homework assignments on the weekend sometimes was to get Evan out of his room. They kidnapped him one weekend, and I have a picture of it. But about 10 years old, he read a story. And he decided the Marines were for him. And he wasn't an outdoor kid. So from then on, I never had to tell him to clean his room because it was spotless, because that became where he worked out. And he used his phone as a pedometer, and he would walk up to 26 miles a day, L shape in his room. And he ate about 5 things. Strict diet. He was going to be a Marine. And that was his singular goal. So when he went to do his ASVAB, he scored really high, and they gave him the paper, and I think they marked 3 things off of it and said, "You can be whatever you want." He said, "I want infantry." And they said, "Nope, pick something else." He said, "Nope, I want infantry." So they made him write an essay. And then they said, "It's not good enough. Write another one." And they said it was. They just wanted to see how bad he wanted it, because they knew he didn't like writing. And I have his essays, and they are phenomenal. You can see his heart. He had such a tender heart. He just didn't always know how to connect to his peers, but he would do anything for anyone. And he was just my person. He would call me in the middle of the night. He would forget what time it was. So I'd get a call, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. "Hey, Ma, you up?" So I never slept. I'm just now getting to the point where I can sleep in the middle of the night, because those were my times. He was just it. He's the best kid a mother could have. And I'm sure you all feel the same about your kids. He was my Evan. Nobody liked him. Unique.
You read some of those essays to me and they brought me to tears. Do you have any of them near you? Or
I do.
I would really love to hear some of what he wrote.
Okay, so gotta put these on. So these are his essays, exactly as Evan typed them. You can't see his spelling, but there are a few reasons I want to join the infantry. Firstly, I want to join the infantry so that I can give my all. I never want to look back and regret knowing that I could have done more. And to my knowledge, the infantry requires the most bravery, courage, and commitment. I'll never forget an old teacher who was a veteran who refused to stand on Veterans Day because he never fought. And I don't want to be in that position. Secondly, I want a chance to protect fellow Marines. I would much rather risk my life defending others than have a Marine risk his life defending me. Thirdly, I want to live up to those who came before me. I'm descended from many soldiers and war heroes who risked and gave their lives on the front line. And so I want to make sure I do everything I can to live up to that legacy. And finally, I want a chance to do what's right. And to my understanding, the infantry would provide me the best opportunity to defend good people. In the end, I'd much rather be wounded or homeless with the pride of knowing I gave my all than to be rich and successful and know I could have given more. However, all of this said, I don't want to join the infantry if I won't be of use. So I only want to join if you think I'll be useful. And why I want to join the infantry, part 2. As you probably realized from my first essay, I'm not very good at either writing papers or putting my thoughts to words. Honestly, I'd rather do hours of PT than type. But if this is required to be an infantry, then here it is. Now, I'm not really sure how to start this, so I'll start with why I wanted to join the Marines in the first place. I can remember the first time I ever thought about the military. I was 4 years old playing on the floor in Houston and saw some movie about the military. From that moment on, I had nothing but respect and admiration for the military. Though when I was that young, I imagine I just thought they looked cool. As I grew up, my love of history led me to study many wars and battles, and in every single one that the Marines were involved in, they stood out. Over time, the Marines became the equivalent of superheroes to me. When I was 12, I was in a really bad place. I'd put on a ton of weight, I hadn't worked a day in my life, and I got a 0.3 GPA and was about to move again and lose all of my friends. But then I read a book called Ghost of War by Ryan Smithson, an Army reservist who served in Iraq. It was the first time I heard what the military was really like. I looked at myself and realized I had no right to be the lazy idiot I was when people were out there giving their all for me. Doing more research, I found that the Marine infantry seemed to give more than anyone else and to be universally respected. From that point on, for 5 years until I walked into the Layton office for the first time, I began to try to prepare with no one pushing me but myself and only my dad encouraging me. And just a caveat for Mom, I supported him too, but he had to toe the line for a few things, so it took him 6 months before he did. For me, becoming a Marine infantryman seemed harder and less likely than becoming president. It wasn't so much a goal as an insane dream. But then with Hernandez's and really all the recruiters' help, I was told that I wasn't only capable of passing boot camp, but was becoming one of the top performers. And now I truly believe I can make it. I really don't know what I can say to convince you, but I would ask that you please consider me allowing me to be an infantryman, not just for the moral reason I want to join, but also for the lifestyle as well. To my understanding, the life of an infantryman is one of routine, training, cleaning, boredom, and hurry up and wait. This is very similar to my current lifestyle, which I do enjoy. In the end, this is my dream and the reason I came to the Marines. Had I been concerned with preparing for a future or having a good life, I would have tried in school and never become to a recruiter. My goal is to serve and to give my all, and to my knowledge, the infantry will allow me to do this. This is the hard part. All this said, I only want to be an infantryman if I will be of use. If your reason for not wanting me to go to infantry is due to you feeling I'm not qualified, or would somehow put other Marines at risk, or even dishonor the Corps, then please tell me, and I will not bring this up ever again. As a big reason for my desire to go to infantry is that I'm an only child and have spent most of my life moving around. And so the thought of a Marine risking his life on the front line when I could have taken his place terrifies me more than anything else in the world, as the Marines are the closest I will ever get to having brothers. Evan Andrew Bath.
That is fucking beautiful. He spoke like a Marine before he even became a Marine.
And then the flip side to what happened to those kids out there. And I know we're going to get into that. Thank you so much for being here.
I read part of those. They only allowed us to testify at 2 of the boards, but I did read at least part of those at both of them. I felt like they needed to hear it.
Well, and tell us a little bit more. I know that that you were able to attend some of these boards. First of all, can you just explain what a board is and all of that just briefly for our viewers, for ourselves? Yes. And then go into maybe like what you learned when you attended these other boards that some of the other families were not able to attend.
Yes. So like Christiana, there are certain things that I can't elaborate on right now, but there were some things that were shared with us in the report that are on record that I can elaborate on and that I can clarify that we were told originally that have now been cleared up. So as far as boards go, and you know, I'm telling you from a civilian perspective, my understanding that I have learned. I am not an expert by any means, but you have the criminal side is if someone has a court martial, and I don't know if the criminal side would be the correct terminology, but someone can have a court martial and be thrown out or thrown into the brig. There's also the administrative side. So in our case, they opted not to hold anybody accountable where they would take criminal action against them. They decided to take administrative action against various people. So in this case, they were deciding if they were going to keep certain individuals in the Marine Corps or not. If they stayed in the Marine Corps, were they going to be free and clear with no responsibility, or were they going to be found guilty of substandard performance? If they were found guilty of substandard performance, in effect, it kind of stops their forward progression in the Marine Corps. So they basically have to retire after a certain amount of time, because if they're a captain, they're always going to be a captain. They can't rank up. The other side of that, they could be involuntarily separated from the Marine Corps, which happened to one individual. He's being involuntarily separated. At that point, they're going to decide, is he keeping his current rank, benefits, or is he going to be ranked down? So it's kind of administrative versus criminal. I don't know if that helps a little bit. In and of itself, that's a little bit of a slap in the face because they come into our home, and I literally was told the Marine Corps killed your son. These are the people that are responsible. This is what happened. Procedures were not followed. And then they do administrative boards. I sat through every single one of them except for one person's. And only one person is being involuntarily separated from the Marine Corps. What's even more of a slap in the face, it is my understanding that now that they have gone through these processes, there's still someone that will review the findings and they can be overturned. So yeah, there's that. So we had one person that was involuntarily separated. There were two that was found guilty of substandard performance, and the others, nothing. I am okay with two of them. One of the ones that was found guilty of substandard performance, I don't agree with that assessment. He was not in control of the movements of the beach. I understand in his position that he does have to assume some responsibility for his battalion. But hearing and knowing all of the information that I have, I do not agree with that one. I support him. The captain that received substandard performance, I feel like he should have been involuntarily separated. And I do feel there are people that should have been court-martialed.
Were these people like in the immediate chain of command that their careers were affected? Or can you speak on that?
So one of the things that I did not understand at the beginning is, we keep talking about the 1-4, but there are two pieces to this. It's not just the 1-4. You have the battalion that provided the tracks, and then you have 1-4. So you have two complete separate battalions. The battalion commander that provided the tracks, this is not something that has been hidden. They've already publicized it. He had his own hearing. And I'm not going to speak to that right now because I can't remember if the results have been published yet. I believe they have, but I didn't confirm before I came on here. So I don't want to publicize what the findings were yet. All of these were either commanders of the battalion or people in direct reports. There were so many things. I guess I was listening to you talking, and as you were going through all of things, I could have just 1, 2, 3, 4, just what they've told us, but even just sitting through the boards, I found out so much information just from what they've told us, and then through testimony, things that were on record. Just they told us that our sons did not receive UET training, which is the underwater egress training. So that particular piece of training that everybody is supposed to have to get on an AAV, or a track as they call them, that is how you get out of the track if it's sinking. It's vital that they have this. We were told that the battalion commander did not have this training for them. Sitting through what I sat through, I learned it wasn't the SOP. For civilians that might not know, that's the standard operating procedure. It is now the SOP since the accident. The SOP at that time was if the UET or underwater egress trainer was down or broken, they could not get to it because there's one trainer for Pendleton and all of the other areas right there. You could use the chair. The chair is basically a dunker chair in a swimming pool. They couldn't get to it. They all had the chair. And that was a misstatement by me. They did not all have. There's one person that failed and one person that never was trained for that. So when we say that they weren't truthful with us, even in the investigation results, it feels like they misdirected us because they came into our home and they said, here's an unredacted copy. This is everything that happened to your child. This is who you're supposed to be mad at. And this is why you're supposed to be mad at them. And then I'm sitting in these boards and I'm listening. So one of the people that I'm supposed to be mad at, well, the person that's under him tells him everybody has this training. In their electronic system, everybody's listed as having the training. He keeps talking about these cards that they have. They keep everything. His sergeant keeps them, index cards where everybody is written down all their training. So they have a backup to their system. So it is correct. And he's very proud of their system. And I turned around to the person sitting next to me and I said, well, if the system is so correct, then how come he didn't know X hadn't ever been trained and X failed their training? And then why did he tell his commander that everybody was fully trained? Because nobody but one had UET training. But then when they came to our home, they put it off on the commander and told us that they didn't follow SOPs. There's a lot of misdirection.
Why do you think that is?
When you go to the boards, there's a lot of finger pointing in a circle so that nobody has to take accountability. And they kept pointing it down to the little guy, and it wasn't him. Even as far down as saying that he didn't tell them to drop their gear. Yes, he did. It was contradicted. On top of the fact that the LPUs or their life vest work up to 300 pounds over their gear. So even if he hadn't have given them the order, those life vests are supposed to work over their gear. He also told them to deploy those life vests while he was standing there looking and talking to them. So I would like to know why in the autopsy report it's deployed but not inflated. He said, I told them to deploy them. I watched them deploy them, but they weren't coming out of the water. I questioned the life vest from day one. No one will give me an answer.
So we don't know if the life vests were viable equipment. Is that the big question?
That's a question in my mind. Because here's my question. I had someone from Dover tell me the assumption is that they got out close to the surface, tried to make it to the surface, was not able to get to the surface and sank back down to the bottom. If you are in an AAV at the bottom of the ocean and the currents, because you can't get out and the currents take you out of the AAV, do you not think that you're all going to be piled up in the same area? Because the currents are going to take you to the same place. But if you get out before you get to the bottom, as the AAV is sinking, you're going to come down in a cone shape. That's how they are at the bottom of the ocean. They're around the AAV. And, you know, you think about it, my casualty officer, she was not one that came in and summarized what they told her to tell us. She would come in and she would hold the paper and she would read the paper. I was scared to death. All I could think of is, first of all, I'm very analytical. So when they first told us, they told us there were 13 AAVs, 2 safety boats, and 2 ships. 2 or 3 ships, can't remember how many ships. I don't want to misspeak. How do I know that? Because I said it over and over and over, because my mind I kept saying, there's no way that they got through 13 tracks and 2 safety boats and 3 ships without anyone seeing them. They had to have seen somebody, even if they went under the water and they would have seen somebody. I know where my son is. Get somebody down in that water. I understand if you have to keep, I want you to keep searching, but if there's an air pocket, go down and find them. So I kept asking them, is the hatch opened or closed? They came to our homes and they told us that the robot went down. They went into the track and they identified each person in the track. And I kept saying, is the hatch opened or closed? Because I kept saying those numbers over and over and over, I know that's what they told us. I wouldn't have known how many tracks were out there if they hadn't told me. When I talked to the other mothers, they were told the same thing about being in the track. So when I got the autopsy, which I looked at by myself, by the way, very traumatizing to see your child without a face by yourself. I called Tiana and I said, Tiana, get Chase's autopsy. Where does it say he is? Evan says near the AAV. It doesn't say he's in it. It says he's near it. So my casualty officer arranged a call with Dover. And she said, oh no, ma'am, there's only one person in the AAV. And I can only tell the family of that person, and I'm not telling you, so it's not Evan. And that's when she told me that the assumption was that they got out close to the surface. Life vests lose their buoyancy pretty much completely after 33 feet. Do I know exactly where they got out? I don't. It was going down fast. Why did she make that assumption? Why did she say that? I have a lot of questions.
And the answers are slow going.
I don't think I'll ever get the answer to that question.
Right, and seem to be being covered up quickly, as fast as those AAVs went down.
Mm-hmm. And you have to understand, I am not against the military. I am not against the Marines. I support the Marines 100%. To me, if I were to hate the Marines, If I were to be trying to tear them down, I would be tearing down the legacy of something that my son wanted. And he was proud to be a Marine. Was he ready to get out? He was counting down the days. He would call me and tell me how many days he had left, but he was proud to be a Marine. I simply want to make it better. I have a bunch of kids that call me mom now in his unit. I don't want another phone call.
You know, the honor and the integrity and the valor of the name Marine is being tarnished by this negligent, toxic culture that seems to be creeping up into our, you know, our military at a continual rate. And we, you know, like where are these good commands, and why aren't they looking at these toxic, you know, cultures and saying enough?
Exactly. I think you and I were talking earlier. If you think about this, in our situation, track 5, that's the number of the track that sank. That was one of 6 tracks in distress that day. Well, 5 tracks that day, and 1 had previously been in distress. It's mind-blowing. And at the time of the accident, Kimberly, you were talking about safety tracks. They were the acting safety track when they sank.
I have a quick question. You said Evan was counting down the days till he was out of the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why he wanted out of the Marines?
I think he was a little bit disillusioned, and I can tell you that he told both my mom and me multiple times. He said, if we go to combat, we're not ready.
Wow.
And
He already had those suspicions and knew that he wasn't protected. I think about what Christiana said about the St. Michael's pin that she had, and or that her son had, necklace yes, and that he was probably wearing that at the time because that's what was found on his body, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but he wore that when he felt scared.
Yeah.
And I just think about the preparation, like you just said, they weren't ready. The equipment wasn't ready. They weren't prepared. I think about Mason Weber on base at Fort Hood and his accident, so-called accident where the engine falls on top of him because they're not using the proper equipment, a strap instead of a hook. Gross negligence. And I know there's a lot that you obviously are holding back. A lot of these, you know, mic drop, jaw dropping things that maybe hopefully you'll be able to share with us soon. But it's just a continual cover up. And I feel that a lot of that sometimes people hold back, because I have, out of fear. I did for a long time. I mean, when I went to Fort Hood and I protested, I was a little bit nervous, you know, about going out there and showing my face and not having all of the 100% the facts and findings. But I had my suspicions, you know, and
well, I'll say this. I have all of the same 5,000 pages that Tiana and the other parents do. The reason that I went to the boards, I knew that I wasn't going to hear 100% of the truth. I knew that the outcomes were somewhat predetermined. It's just the way it is. But I also knew through all the testimony, I was also going to find some truth in there. I went with an open heart and an open mind. I've had 2 years to eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. I was in a room full of officers, and I told them, do not put me in a room with a vehicle commander, because if you do, I will throat punch him. And guess what? When his board was done, I looked him in his eyes and I told him, this is what I told them. But I also told him, I don't know if you made all of the right decisions, but I know you were doing everything you could to keep my son alive. And if you didn't make the right decisions, I forgive you. Because you know why I said that? Sitting through all of the boards, I learned some truth there. I talked to him and I believe him, and I've changed my opinion about him. And I don't care if any other parent agrees with me. That's my opinion of him. And I learned that by going through those boards. The man tried to keep my son alive. And some of the stuff that are in those books about him are absolute rubbish. It's a misdirect. It's a misdirect from the higher ups. And I am not a patsy that you can, and I think you're the one I told, I'm not a Hallmark mom. I'm a lifetime mom. I will find out what's happened to my son. I'm not about tearing down the Marines. I want to make it better. That's not my mission. And what they did to our children, not just the Amtrak kids. And I call them kids. They're not kids. They were men. They gave their lives in service for our country. All of ours, your sons, the other sons in our group, the ones that haven't even joined our group yet. I want to fight for them. But I'm going to fight to make it better so nobody else has to join our group. I want the next group of people that join the Marines, the Army, I want them to be able to do so with pride. We need to clean it up, because the fact of the matter is our country needs the military.
But these kids were not prepared to die behind enemy lines on the same territory, on the same, soil that they swore to defend.
No, they weren't.
Negligently, corruptly.
But you know what? It's not the military that killed them. It's some people that are in the military that are rubbish. And it needs to be cleaned up.
Leadership has to be held accountable.
Yes.
And we need independent investigations.
We absolutely do. You cannot have an institution policing itself.
100% agree with you. And we need better training. We need better equipment. We need equipment that works. We need training that they have to go through. I know training is mandatory, but apparently they can pick and choose what training exercise is mandatory. From what I gather from Evan's story.
So it's a funny story, but it's a good example. A lot of them had been in his unit had been exposed to COVID or had COVID. So those that weren't had to play the terrorist. They were doing a training objective. And Evan and his roommate, who we also lost, they were giving wooden stick guns because there weren't enough of the paintball guns to go around. So Evan was telling me about this. And when the good guys came up to clear the hallway, and Evan and his roommate Brian, they were the terrorists. They came up to clear the hallway. Evan said, "Mom, Brian was, he said, he jumped out with the rebel yell and they shot him like 6 times. He said, I wasn't stupid. I let Brian jump out." And he said, then I jumped out and let him shoot me 1 time. And he said, I hollered, I'm hit. And I took off. And I think the moral of that story is here, Evan and Brian are sitting ducks getting shot. And we think paintballs, those little bitty round things that already hurt, their paintball guns aren't like our paintball guns. And he showed it tore his clothes. And he had a huge bruise. And they can't even train, like they couldn't even defend themselves in the training because there weren't enough paintball guns to go around. What does that say? And yeah, it was a funny story at the time, but even then I was thinking, there's not enough paintball guns. If there's not enough paintball guns, what else are we short of?
Yeah, where exactly the National Defense Authorization Act in 2019, which would have covered training and resources, equipment for 2020 was $716 billion. This year it was $770 billion. And why are we still training and going to war with substandard equipment, substandard housing, training that's not happening? We've got the money. Where is this money going? Billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. Tell us, Terry.
And here's the reason. And okay, the Brandon Act has not been pushed down, has not been implemented, and neither has the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act. For the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act, they are saying they don't have the money to do that. So here's what happens when the military gets this money. Each branch will use the money as they see fit. If they believe that I'm going to use training as a subject, if they believe their training is all up to date, they don't need to do anything else, everything is top notch, they allocate that money to go somewhere else. If they don't spend the money for training, what they do is they'll break down the money and get things that they want, not necessarily need, but what they want. So, and it's legal for them to allocate money. So if they, as an institution, if they, like the Marines or the Navy or the Air Force and the Marines, Air Force and the Army, excuse me, if they don't need that money, they're going to give it somewhere else. And I know this because in 2019, while Patrick and I were on the Hill pushing for the Brandon Act the first time, we went to a suicide House of Representative committee hearing. In that hearing, they said that Congress told the Office of Suicide Prevention, we gave you $600 million to combat suicide. You used 35,000 to do that. what did you use the rest of the money for? That office could not answer that question. I need to find that clip because they record everything, but that is, and Patrick and I, my husband, were sitting there in the galley listening to this, and we're looking at each other going, what? Because had they have used it for what the money was for, our son may have still been alive. But that's what they do. They only use a portion, if that, and they allocate it to where they want the money to go. If that answered your question. We learned that obviously in 2019, but that's exactly where it goes.
And they will not answer your questions. They will condescend to you, and they will answer your question with something that has nothing to do with your question. Case in point, when they came to our house, they asked us to give them any questions and they would answer them in 30 days. And the first set was almost 2 years ago and they still haven't answered some of them. But I asked a question. I had pre-typed out my questions and they were kind of just notes to myself, but because I had typed them, they took them with them. We had a discussion that they weren't my verbatim questions. And it was, when are you going to have an ejection system similar to an airplane for AAVs? You're willing to sacrifice a multi-million-dollar plane for the life of one pilot, but not a track for the life of multiple infantrymen. So that was kind of just my indication. I'm not thinking you're going to push a button and have infantrymen like popping out of the AAVs and shooting. And so we had a conversation about that. They didn't answer it for a year. So right before they came to give us the results of another one of our investigations, they decided to answer it. Instead of answering it, they answered it like I was actually thinking about pushing a button and guys were going to shoot up out of the track. They were that condescending. And then they started touting all of the safety features on the AAVs/ACVs, the very ones that didn't work. They actually started talking about the IL system, which is the emergency egress lighting, which is supposed to come on, I believe, when water hits boot level. It didn't. Our guys were using cell phone lights. Just all of the different things, the glow sticks by the hatches so that they can see to open the hatches that weren't there. And so when they came in my house, I said, this is so disgusting. I said, it made me so sick at my stomach. I didn't even bother to finish reading the answer. I said, how dare you? And usually I'm very nice when they're at my house. It made me sick, but that's how they answer our questions. They don't.
Right.
The fact that they answered it that way by not answering it, it is absolutely true to form.
How do you know that they use their phones as flashlights? I'm just curious.
Witness testimony.
Okay.
There are survivors.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't sure if there was or not. Interesting. Okay. Thank
That
you.
is so
The drivers
crazy.
are, I'm sorry.
I just keep thinking how crazy that is. And in this day and age, we have cell phones. But like you think about like if that had happened or if they didn't have their cell phones with them.
Yeah.
I mean.
And you said that you were starting to say, was the driver alive?
So the driver survived, the rear crewman survived. There were I think 5 or 6 survived. So there were 3 on top of the track that were swept off into the ocean. The driver, as it was sinking, his hatch wouldn't open. So he had to basically crawl because it was going down stern first. And he had to basically crawl up, and as he was crawling up, he felt someone in there, and there was actually two people that he actually had to release theirs because not everybody had released their life vest, and he did, and he pushed them out of the track, and then he had to go ahead and release his. And I know this because I sat through all of the boards and I've heard his testimony 5 times. And he was about 20 feet from the surface and he knew he was about to lose conscious. So he pulled his and he woke up on the somerset. So I do know from one of the guys, I asked him what Evan was doing, and I know that Evan was praying, which for me, that means something.
What has it been like to work with the other families?
Initially, they kept us all very separated. It was very isolating. And one of the moms called one day sobbing. She had had a bad experience at a dinner for Gold Star parents because, you know, us not being true Gold Star next to kin because our kids died over here. Which will be one of my battles.
I'm right there with you, sister. I've experienced the same thing. I was texting Terry under the table at one of the events, and she was laughing, kind of not laughing, but like rolling her eyes, going, you know, I was hoping that this wouldn't happen to you, but
I see, but, and I'll get back to your original question, but just to say this, I understand both sides of it, but some that pass away on this side because they lose their fight. They were in combat and they saw some really, really rough things. All of our kids, they made the decision to give their life for their country. What it's doing is it's causing separation. Can't we all just be one and maybe do an extra medal or something? But to say, and what they've done is they've thrown people like our accident, and I hate the word mishap, I hate it. But our accident, we're in no man's land. Our kids were doing their job, and the Marines actually said, we killed them. We did this. So where does that leave us? But they said, no, you're next to kin. So more on that to come. But
what does that mean? They said you're next of kin.
So there are 2 pins. There's a purple pin that's Gold Star, and then there's a gold pin that's Gold Star next to kin. So technically what that means is when they said you can get into the federal parks if you're Gold Star. We even had one of our dads write and ask because they do a lot of hiking. We didn't qualify to get into the parks for free because we're Gold Star next to kin. And it's the most asinine things I've ever heard of, to make that distinction. And what it does is you have, I do understand we're all looking for meaning and the reason that our loved ones passed away, but you've got people that lost their children or their spouses in horrific manners, and you've got another family that lost it in a horrific manner across the pond, and they're also looking for meaning in the reason they lost their loved one, and then you're having them treat a mourning family
as less
Yes,
because of only simply how their service member passed away.
yes.
Our guys wanted to die valiantly. If they were going to die on the they were going to die on the battlefield valiantly. That's what they pledged. Not to die, like I said, behind enemy lines on the same territory they swore to defend.
I actually brought up, and I usually just use the 22 a day. And for those in the civilian world that doesn't know what that means, we lose about 22 a day to suicide in the military world. And I was talking to someone and I said, a lot of our 22 a day, they were in combat and they saw some really horrible things. And sometimes they can't take it anymore because of what they saw. And they said, well, they should just suck it up. Mine did.
Are you fucking serious?
I have heard some horrible things. And I was just like,
Bitches, man.
and to me, I think the DOD has done this because they've made that distinction. They have literally made this distinction. And people have on the boards have even talked about like our kids, not with this, but they should have just dropped their gear and gotten out. They've made our parents question while our kids, and I even told Tiana, I said, don't you dare get mad at Chase because our kids followed orders. They were taught to follow orders. And if our kids would have dropped their gear and they would have gotten out of that track without being told, and somehow that track would have made it back to the Somerset, they would have been in trouble. I said, if they were in combat and they were told to hold fire and somebody got scared and they would have shot off a round, they would have gotten their whole platoon killed. They followed orders. That's what they're taught to do. They did their job. They went down fighting. They fought for their lives to the end. And to tell me I'm less than because he died on this side of the pond and he was not being shot at by somebody else that was not US.
And they followed orders. They trusted their leadership that failed them.
And you know how they followed orders? This is something I learned in the boards. Higher leadership. There was pressure. I heard this in at least 4 boards. There was pressure from up above because it was felt that they wanted them back on the ship. Not because they needed them back there, but just so they could have their rack and a hot meal that night. Not because they needed to be. So yes, this is something that is near and dear to my heart. That and paperwork, making sure paperwork's correct.
Just the fact that the majority of military deaths since 2006 are non-combat, and 93% of those happen on US soil. I mean, because of negligence, I mean, that should say something in itself that we have a problem literally murdering service members on US soil. And your deaths weren't accidents.
Right.
You know, the suicides were preventable. Literally, they're being murdered on US soil. So what is the difference if they were murdered here on US soil or died in the combat zone?
Right.
You know, it's almost twice as bad.
Exactly.
It's criminal.
Because a lot of times when they're across the pond, they're killed by friendly fire. And the thing,
So
yeah.
Should we start separating it by that then? Only if you died by the hands of the enemy, are you a Gold Star mom? And if it's in the combat zone and it's by friendly fire, or murder or, you know, something suspicious, then we put them in the next of kin. I mean, what is this separation exactly?
There shouldn't be a separation. They should all have the combat pin, the purple pin.
I believe that if they're in combat and they die in combat, they should have something special, but it should not be that the families have a special designation. They should receive a special ribbon, like give them, you know, like we have the Purple Heart or something. The service member should get a special recognition, but the Gold Star family member should not have a special designation.
Exactly.
And the reason that I found this out is because one of our family members had gone and they were told that and I don't want to misspeak because it's been a while, but they called me and this is how I actually met, like really started speaking to the Gold Star family member that was within our group. She could barely speak. She was crying so hard because they were told, no, you can't sit here. You're not true Gold Star. It literally flabbergasted me that another parent who had lost their child would speak to another military family who had lost their child like that. I'd never make that distinction. I don't care how you lost them, whether it's your spouse, your child, your parent, whatever. We're family. How dare you?
And that's why we don't belong to Gold Star. We don't belong to TAPS either. I refuse with both because of, well, the Gold Star, because of the treatment we get.
Yeah, I
We're
had an
just
interesting
different.
experience with the American Gold Star mothers. Hi, American Gold Star mothers.
So
I had a really awful experience with that organization. Actually threatened to sue me. So, true story. I got a phone call from the national president one day, and was asked. I put their crest there because I was American Gold Star Mother. I joined their club, and I am an artist, so I did a portrait of myself with the crest that I get to wear, the pin. And I was told that I had to cease and desist from using that emblem in any of my artwork, that they are not political party, or, you know, they're not political, and that I needed to remove that from all of my artwork. And she copied the national president copied me in a message to her attorney. And I took everything down that I knew to take down. I was scared to death. And then the next day I got another message threatening to sue me if I didn't take one picture I missed down.
So when have we become so political instead of, I mean, we're supposed to be helping each other and mourning together. And this is what has blown my mind about the whole process. And I guess when I sat in those boards, and I'm going to bring this back around to this, is I sat in the boards and I listened to one CO after another cover each other. It was like a red robin. And I believe one of my interviews, I said, they interviewed me on the worst day, because it was finally the day I broke. I had not cried like that since the day that my casualty officer walked in and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am," which I hate that word. Don't ever call me ma'am again. But they are declaring your son deceased. And that was the first time I had cried like that since. And one of the attorneys on the prosecution team told me, "You need to take the rest of the afternoon and just go relax, go sit by the ocean and just relax for the rest of the day." And I had another lady with me. I won't bust her out, but she looked at her and she said, "Why would you even tell her that? Do you know her son died? He died in the same ocean she was telling me to go sit by and just relax for the rest of the day." So They interviewed me. Not my best day. And I said, no one has so much as taken responsibility for forgetting to turn off a light switch. And that's literally, when it comes down to it, we have 5,000 pages. We've had 6 administrative boards. We've had one CO, the battalion commander of 1-4, and he said, I take responsibility for my command because that's my job. And I commend him for that. He said, but I'm not going to take responsibility for what everybody else did. And he shouldn't. But nobody has taken responsibility for their personal actions. And I listened to a commander, a captain, sit and bald-faced lie. And then they ask him, do you think, knowing what you know now, that your boys had all the training they needed? And would you do any additional training now? And he said, I think they had all the training they needed, and I would not do any additional training. And then they said, why have you never dropped your pack? And he proceeded to say, because PFC Bath, Lance Corporal Ostrowski, Lance Corporal Sweetwood, and he called every one of our boys' names, deserve me to keep fighting. And I'm going to tell you that the staff sergeant that was sitting beside me put his hand across my lap because I started standing up. It was everything that I could do not to walk up and punch him in his face. After he just said that they were sufficiently trained and he would not do any additional training, when he had sat up there and lied. And he had already lied to his commander, saying that they were all trained. And that's the boards I sat through.
The egos.
Bold-faced lies and bamboozling right in front of your face.
Here's the thing. This whole book is full of notes. And when they would testify and I would write, I can go right back to the notes of what they said before.
Which is the investigation report proved that there wasn't any training and that the resources were inadequate. And
no, but
so
remember,
this guy's still in the military.
He said that he had backup index cards in his testimony on the record. You can FOIA it. And remember, the investigation report told us that they were supposed to, per SOPs, have the UET underwater egress training. It only came out in the boards that this vet chair was okay, which has now been changed to the UET training. So yes, but he was found substandard performance. So he's still in, but
He'll be forced out. We should all wait on the other side of the gate when that day comes.
yeah.
Hello, welcome to the civilian world. Hi, how's it going?
Where your rank doesn't mean diddly squat.
Yes.
All that fruit salad.
Yes, they went on and on and on in the opening statements about, you understand that if you find them guilty of substandard performance, it's going to affect his job search with other corporations and large corporations. So when I testified, I said, my son will not be able to have a job, whether it's at a large corporation or McDonald's. It doesn't matter because he's no longer here. I will never walk him down the aisle. I will never get to pack to go visit my son. I will never get to hold my grandchild. That was significant because he brought his baby child every single day and had his wife stand there and hold it so the board could see him every single day. So I made sure that I turned around and looked at the baby when I said it.
Yeah, well, you know what, it was 8-9 counts of murder.
Something like that. It would have been.
I mean, in the civilian world, if this person had been held accountable to the law of the land.
Yes, because he was directly
They were
responsible
all,
for training.
you know, under.
Because here's the thing, the board asked him directly. We understand because these tracks for every hour, this is how significant this is. These tracks, every single hour that you utilize them and use them, every hour, they need 8 to 10 hours of maintenance for 1 hour of service. So the board asked him, we understand because these were in such deplorable condition that they were in maintenance for 18 hours a day, just trying to get them ready for us to use them to train in them. Did you ever take out a different track or an AAV on land to teach these guys how to do underwater egress training? We understand you can't put it in the water. We understand you didn't have access to the underwater egress trainer, but you just take a track on land and teach them how to do it. He said, yes, we did that multiple times. Well, guess what? Somebody that was there that did the training with them, that knows, said, sure, we did. After the accident, he's lying and was willing to testify. They wouldn't let him testify. What does that say?
Good old boys club, still alive. Well, yeah,
Hi, good old boys.
they're all
Heather Baker from
officers,
Texas.
right? Are these all officers?
You know,
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think he's an officer. He's either NCO or officer. I'm not sure where his rank lies in that. So, you know, these, to me, this is not necessarily mic drop, but this is stuff that I found out by attending the board. So there are things that I'm holding back, but there are things that I found in the boards that are updates. I mean, I have so many updates, you know. Even, you know, y'all talked about the track hitting because it didn't follow SOP. And I can't even remember if I said this, but the track, it wasn't that it wasn't following SOP when it hit our track. It was in distress. It couldn't navigate in the water, so it couldn't stay back 50 meters, which is their standard operating procedure. And the waves were 10 to 14 feet high. And because it couldn't navigate properly, that's what slammed it into our track, not because they didn't follow SOPs, which is what we were told.
the equipment failed to perform. The folks that were responsible for making sure the equipment was good to go failed to do their job. And then you have the training that was complete failure. I mean, your son had a premonition of why he wanted to get out, because he didn't feel safe. He was already looking at this going, this is going in a real bad direction.
Did anybody pose the question as to why this equipment was used if it was not ready?
So one of the questions that was asked at the board, because one of the things that came up at the board was, so two of the numbers that were thrown around was 169 tracks and 199 tracks that were available. So they have their terminology. And I don't know, I'm not going to share their terminology because I don't know what is marine terminology that can be shared and cannot share. But there are certain tracks that when a company goes out on a MEU, which is a Marine Expeditionary Unit, that's what Evan was part of. When one comes back, it chops to the new MEU. So the new MEU will say, I need this much equipment and I need this many troops. They are supposed to get the best troops, the best equipment. Within all of that, they had some available. What was happening at that time, just like on your car, sometimes when you have recalls and you have to take your car in and they upgrade it, that's the easiest way I know to explain it. They were having to do some upgrades on some of the tracks. So they had all these different areas that they were supposedly putting these 169 to 199 tracks across all of these areas. So one of the board members asked the commanding battalion officer of the tracks, how long in advance do you normally know when a new MEU is going to chop or go? How long in advance? And the answer was 6 months to a year. And he said, in 6 months to a year, you can't get 14 tracks up to date and ready to go. Now, I did not go back to attend the defense portion of it. I only attended the first week. So I don't know if they ever revisited that side, but I know when we were there, that question was never sufficiently answered. We were told they were taken off of the junkyard. What it actually was, it's called the admin deadline lot. They have to be in alpha or bravo condition. What that means is they have to be in running condition. They need to be started once a month. They need to be in working condition. They were not. To put this into perspective, on the way out to the Somerset on 27 July, one of the tracks, I believe it lost propulsion. Something happened to it. So that's one track. The morning of 30 July, one of the tracks never left the well deck of the ship. So that's two tracks. After they finished the objective on the island, track 12 blew a hubcap. So it was staying on the island. So it wasn't in working order. It's 3 tracks. On the way back to the Somerset, so they're in a line, a straight line. The track right behind Evan's track, so Evan's track was track 5, the one right behind him went into distress. So the last track, which would have been the acting safety track because they did not have safety boats, came around in front of that one, towed it back to the island. So the one that was in distress, that's 4 tracks. Evan's track is now the acting safety boat when it sank. So track 5 sank, that's 5 tracks. The track that came to assist that hit them was, from what I heard was boot level water, but I do know it was taking on water. That's 6 tracks in distress out of 14.
All at once.
And you know what I heard over and over and over? Track 5, Evan's track, was considered the golden track. It was the best track out of all of them.
With untrained Marines. I mean, God
It's kind
bless
of
those
like,
kids.
it's kind of like Danielle Lucky's parents being told she received the best medical care the Navy had to offer. It's like his faulty track was the best track out of all these tracks. That's the best they can do. With
Well,
the
I heard
money.
that from the driver. Like they got to pick their own tracks off of that lot. That was the best one that they had. They had the least amount of troubles.
So
How sad
I read
is
at the end of
that?
20. It's pathetic. Our military deserves the best equipment that this world has to offer. So I read that at the end of 2021 that they permanently pulled the AAV from. No.
So
It
here's
says
the
they
deal.
yeah.
Again, wordplay. So if you notice,
Okay.
they permanently pulled it from the water with the caveat unless there's an emergency, but they did not give the parameters of what an emergency is. An emergency could be that they need 5 tracks and they only have 3. For the Marines, that can constitute emergency. While I was out at the boards, as I'm driving, one of my boys had COVID, so I was taking him some food. They were training in the ACVs that day, and I'm driving out there and I get the whoop, stop in the middle of the road for the AAV crossing. And here comes 5 or 6 AAVs. Now, they're not going in the water right then. They were training on the land. And one of them had all the little guys popped out of the back hatch. I'll be honest, I'm sitting in the middle of the road by myself having a panic attack. They're still training. They may not be training in the water, but here's my fear. One of the things that I heard at the boards was the fact when they sit, they can get holes in them. So they already have, I believe it was 136 holes with sills. It's 136, 139, something like that. So, oops, nope. Let me back up. It's right here, 236 holes with sills in an AAV. And if they're testifying that when they're sitting on that admin deadline lot, that they can get holes. And I'm assuming that's from the salt water eating it. And there's a Heather showing a track. Can you imagine? I'm assuming that a sill can corrode. So we don't put them in the water. And then all of a sudden they go, oops, we have an emergency. Let's throw one in the water. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Think about it.
How long was Evan in the Marines?
His 1-year anniversary was the day before. My sister's
These young men are not even able to fulfill their freaking enlistment contracts before they are dead.
No, you know what's really ironic? Evan was born on Memorial Day. He'll be 21 this year.
So Memorial Day is just like a double freaking gut punch.
It is. Brandon's birthday falls on that periodically too. And his birthday obviously is coming up this month, and then his date of death is next month. He was just 21 exactly to the day. He turned 21 when he died, 1 month after his 21st birthday, the day. So I know what it's like to have your son have a birthday on Memorial Day. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. It's hard.
It's the hardest day of the year for me. I mean, all the days from when he left and went into the Army all the way through the day that he died, and all the bamboozling after funeral, the day, it's just like it's just like a cascade of all of these dates that just cripple your heart,
I know some people may not understand that I was talking. I don't even know. I don't even want to say which one I was talking to, because I don't want repercussions for them.
Right.
But I was talking to one of the people that was on the board, not on the board, that had a board. And they said their family asked them why they didn't get out of the Marine Corps, why put themselves through going through the board. And he said, because I need to stay in, because I need to show new Marines coming in what honor looks like.
That's beautiful.
What it means to serve with honor. And all I could think of is that's how my Evan was.
What a good kid, man. These are so young, and they have such heart.
And I could think that's why I want to be really careful with what I'm doing right now. I don't want it to come from a place of anger. I don't want to be screaming and just,
yeah.
I want to make things better. I want somebody to sit up and say, hey, we need change for the better, because there's still, I know there's a lot of people that they're not good, but there are still people that serve with honor and integrity.
Yes.
And I have been blessed to meet a lot of them.
Yeah. And we know that these commands are out there. I mean, Kimberly, when she came to the table on this with us, it blew her mind, because she had such a great career and experience, and for her to sit here and it's been so shocking. I don't want to speak for you, Kimberly. I'm just kind of remembering what you've told me before. I've had grown men, like veterans, like cry and say, this is not the Army that I know. And they're like, it's a gut punch and a heart punch, and so we just want to know, like, where you are and what you feel about all of this, like, what do you think about these non-combat deaths? What are you going to do to make sure that you lead with integrity and empathy? Tell us that you are. Show us, more importantly.
Yeah.
And we'll know, and when the numbers go down, we'll know that you're actually doing some justice of taking care of your, command, the members underneath you. When we start seeing the death toll stop or go down, when we start seeing equipment being taken care of properly, when the 22 a day isn't 22 a day anymore and rising.
Like 25 if you add active duty. 22 is just the veterans who are already out of the military, but 3 a day in active duty die by suicide. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And Alita, just so you know, in order to try to create change, you do have to scream and yell. Trust me.
Oh, I can scream and yell. I can scream and yell with the best of them. I just don't. There's a way to scream and yell
Yes.
without being hateful. And that's what I want to be
Oh,
very careful of.
absolutely. Absolutely. To use your voice, use your experience.
Yes.
Because it is our service members that we care about. I don't want any of their mothers to be in our shoes. But I guarantee you that we have their mamas back.
Absolutely. You know, I didn't get a knock at the door. I found out about it online because they messed up Evan's paperwork.
Wow.
Yeah. The whole paperwork is a whole different story, but Evan had, he tripped in the ship and broke his headphones. So I get a panicked text message, and then I get another phone call because there was one doorway where they had a little bit of service. And so he didn't break OPSEC or operational security for civilians, but he had kind of told me where the general vicinity of where they were. And I have a king size bed and I keep my laptop. And so I kind of have a process in the morning. I turn my computer on, I make my latte, which I have a background, so it's hard to see. And then I read the news while everything's coming up. And I opened it up and I saw 1-4 San Clemente, 15th Mu. And he had told me that he was on a ship tax. And at that point, I knew there was only 20 something or so of them out there. But I'm so determined that I'm not going to be that helicopter mom that I was like, I'm sure he's okay. And so I called my mom. I said, hey, Mom, just say a prayer. This is where Evan is. It's his unit, but I'm sure he's fine. And I called my best friend, who's my pastor's wife, told her the same thing. And I was also on staff at our church at the time. So we just started talking about things with the church, and my phone beeped, and it was Orlando. Well, I didn't answer it. And it beeped again. And I know you know this feeling. You just, And the reason I hate that word is because it's the first word I heard. Ma'am. Because I had read the article, the first words out of my mouth were, is he missing or is he dead? Because it's all I could say. And she said, ma'am, this is, and she said her name. I'm with the U.S. Marine Corps, and I have some news about your son. And she said, do you live in the city I used to live in? Or, I'm trying to find you. I said, is he missing or is he dead? I've already seen the article. And she can't tell you on the phone. So I had to wait 40 minutes for her to get to me, because when I moved, they put my whole address, including the city, on the street address, and left my old city because it was a different suburb. I hate that word. I hate mishap and I hate man. But that being said, I don't want another mother getting a phone call or a knock on the door. I will fight everything I can, because I'm a backup mom to a whole bunch of guys now.
Yeah, because these kids are worth it.
Yes.
They're worth our fight.
Yes. And I've already told them I better be a contact, because a lot of them, their moms don't know to contact me. I love these boys. And I told them, I said, nobody's gonna, you can't feel the whole Evan left, it just means I have a lot of love to give. And they know that. They know I will fight to the death for them. I can't be mad and hate a branch of service that they're all in. You know, I still have to go out on the base and see them. I love them. I'm going to be seeing them next week.
That's so beautiful that you get an opportunity to do that. I mean, you do realize that that's pretty rare for a
It's
lot of
because
us.
I built it.
You've done a great job, and I have built what I can with mine. Terry doesn't have that.
I'm so sorry.
You know, like I mean, they were actually not allowed to even go to Brandon's memorial. They were barred from going on to base, and I don't know how they did that, but
we were kind of shut off at first. They were, and I'm very careful which lines I cross with my boys. I protect them from getting in trouble by things I ask and talk to them about. So a lot of my information, I don't know from them, but I know that they were told not to talk about certain things with us at the beginning. And we had a company that had a private plane that flew about 80 something guys around, but their direct unit was not part of the guys that were flown in. So I had 80 guys from his unit that attended Evan's funeral that were not guys that knew him.
Nice.
But the problem is the ones that knew him and loved him weren't there. And I had met some of them, and I'm sitting there looking because I needed their support. They weren't there. So that made it a little bit sad. Instead of the Marines letting the ones come that wanted to come.
to me, that's just that strategic bamboozling too.
It is.
Nobody from Brandon's command came. The lieutenant who escorted him home, he left before the funeral, and he was supposed to give Patrick the flag. We had nobody from Brandon's unit, his command. They didn't even acknowledge the fact that we had a funeral. No flowers, no cards, no nothing from his command.
We did not get anything at the funeral. Now, I had personal notes from his command. I will tell you that Lieutenant Colonel Regner, who they relieved of command, that man, I was told I was supposed to be angry at in the report. He got me through the first week. He cared, but they told me I was supposed to. And when I say they told me I was supposed to hate him, I say that because they put a lot of the blame on him. And then he was the first person they relieved of command. And then I go to the boards. I have his back. And I'll say it publicly. And I don't care what anybody else thinks. I don't care what any other parent thinks. I have his back. But yes, we didn't have anyone from Evan's command there either, Terry. We had a bunch of Marines that were not part of his unit. I do know that there was someone from Evan's from his Banshee unit that was on personal leave that lived close by that just came on his own, that did not, he was just on leave. And so we had a lot of Marines from the area, our area here, like that came.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice.
So we were lucky in that sense. I wish I wish we would have had, and I think we had a lot of that because I think Evan was their longest running pulley here in Milwaukee. Because I signed for him to do that. I think he was a pulley for more than a year while he was waiting to be able to officially join. But yeah. So I'm full of facts, but I could talk about the facts for 24 hours and still be talking. There's so many, but yeah.
I feel like a broken record.
That's how I feel.
You know. Well, we love you so much. You are a warrior. You are a mother to so many.
There's too many of us.
And I know that our boys are up there and they're leading the way. And I believe that they got their next promotion. And they got their next assignment. And I know that we can all feel that very strongly. Terry, I know that with Brandon, he started a movement. To make sure to protect his battle buddies, to keep them safe from toxic, abusive leadership, to ensure that somebody out there has their back, and then they can reach out for help without the command trying to
Retaliate.
yeah, exactly. Took the words right out of my mouth.
We're already finishing each other's sentences.
I know.
Lovely. God bless America.
God bless America.
Oh, Lord, have mercy. Who thought we would be sitting here like this just a few short years ago?
I know. It blows my mind. My whole world is upside down.
Yeah.
And yet we continue to meet new families every week. And we are joining together, you and I and many others, to bring awareness, but not only just to bring awareness, but to create a movement.
Create change.
To bring families together, to make them feel strong, to stand up with us. We are in the beginning stages of speaking to Congress as a group of families together. Would you like to talk to us more about that?
Okay.
About what we're doing together?
Are you talking to me or Terry?
Yes.
I
Yes.
thought you were talking to Terry.
Would you like to talk about the?
Whew, I first of all, I am so honored to be a part of this. To have a voice for my child
Yes.
is wow. So we are a coalition of moms that are on our way to Congress to speak out regarding the different deaths of our children and our loved ones. We are asking Congress to help us. We have a few different asks of Congress, one of them being we're looking for the military not to police themselves. We need an independent third party to investigate
We're calling this the
Yes.
the Hall of Justice.
Yes, thank you. I was going blank. It's the one thing about, I hate grief brain because I forget my name sometimes. I have gone to
Yes.
introduce myself and I'll say, hi, my name is.
Yeah, grief brain. I'm telling you, it's a real thing.
It's really bad. And I lose my words sometimes. So there should be no government branch that polices itself, investigates itself, judges itself. And so the Hall of Justice is a bill that we're going to be introducing, asking for an independent third party that will do that. The other thing is the Ferris Doctrine. It's spelled F-E-R-E-S, and that was a case law from 1950. It is not law per se, but what it does is it protects the military and suggests, not law again, that you cannot sue the military over deaths for your loved one. So if someone murders your child, can you sue the military? No, not because it's a law, but because it's case law. The interesting thing about this, though, in our case, and I'll use our case as an example, you don't sue because of the Ferris Doctrine. You know what? I'm not going to go there. We're just going to shut that down right now. We just need to amend the Ferris Doctrine. I'll just leave it there. And that's one of our asks of Congress.
It really needs to be abolished.
Well, we can't really use that term. If we abolish the Ferris Doctrine, that will never happen because there will be too many frivolous lawsuits. If somebody breaks a fingernail, they'll sue, and the government can't afford that.
No,
So-
they'll go broke.
Incidents, defying the term incidents of service.
Yeah, so it has to be amended. So there was a Jane Doe case a year or so ago. It was a rape case from West Point, and the Supreme Court decided they didn't want to hear it to amend the Ferris Doctrine because of that. Actually had an attorney, they spent a weekend looking at it, tearing it apart, looking at if they did that, would they consider for our case? It is kind of ridiculous that they protect themselves.
Yep. Yep.
So we are hoping that the public will join with us to say this is enough. It has got to stop. If you could put yourself, it is very hard to put yourself in someone else's place when you're trying to imagine the loss of your child, the loss of your spouse, the loss of your parent. Most people don't want to do that because it's extremely painful. But if for one brief second, you could really let yourself feel and let yourself feel what it would be like to not be able to hold the people accountable who is responsible for that death. Just for one brief second, you would understand what hundreds of us families are going through in the military. And what we're asking for is that you stand with us and say enough is enough. It's time for change. It's time to hold these people accountable. And once we start holding them accountable, change will come because they'll realize that they can't get away with status quo because they'll get in trouble.
Yep, we've been saying that for 4 years. Hold them accountable, suicide to stop.
It's
Hold them
such an
accountable.
easy,
Do what, Kimberly?
yeah, it's such an easy concept that we give to civilians. You know,
Yep.
our military, yeah, we don't give our military the same respect and, you know,
They have different laws than
service
we do.
members. Yeah,
They have different
they
laws.
shouldn't be yeah, they're untouchable.
Yep. And it's because they do police themselves. They can hide stuff they can throw stuff away. I know in our case, everything to do with Brandon was being shredded the second he did what he did. We know that. And why? Because they can do it. They know they can do it. It's
Well,
unfair.
They can lie and they can cover up.
Yep.
They are no match
Yep.
for all of us,
It's sickening.
moms, families that have been subject to military injustices.
Yep.
We're putting our foot down.
Enough's enough.
Yep.
Anybody
Kimberly?
have? Yeah, I was just going to say that. Anybody have anything else to add?
You're muted.
Unmute.
I'm gonna close this out with a poem tonight. Ask me what I was. I'll reply with what I've done. Those things others would not do, I did. Those rivers others would not swim, I swam. Those hills others would not climb, I conquered. Those bridges others would not cross, I crossed. I have celebrated, I have mourned, I have smiled and I have frowned. I have seen death and felt its warm breath. It did not faze me, for I was different. I was a warrior. You asked me what I was? It was my destiny until my last breath to be a United States Marine, and my spirit shall live forever. I'm gonna
Always
tell you,
faithful.
Alita, I'm a big crybaby.
Thanks. You made me cry and I don't cry.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for listening to our stories and standing by us.
We
And
love you guys so much.
Letting us
Yeah.
cry.
yeah, watching us cry, watching us rage.
Just thanks for being an ear and listening. And please contact your congressman, congresswoman, your senators. And let them know how you feel about what's going on and what you're hearing here on Locked and Loaded Diaries. We have got to have your support. You know, call the White House. You know, make your voice be heard. Use your First Amendment rights.
That's right. Primaries are happening right now. If you have somebody, if you have a congressperson or a Senate person, a senator who just, you know, is not walking the walk,
Call them out.
you know, yeah.
Find out where they stand on these issues so that you know who to vote for.
You're making an informed decision on who takes over.
And we're just simple people. I'm a teacher. I'm a school teacher. I've been teaching America's youth for 19 years. You know, Kimberly is a veteran.
I'm an admin,
Yeah,
executive
admin.
administrative assistant.
we're just simple, everyday people. We are America, and so are you. And we love you. You are we the people. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for
Good
listening.
night.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Alita.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
Thank you for being so brave. You're amazing.
You are
All of
amazing.
you. You know, something that you just said something, you just said what we all are, but when it comes down to it, we're just moms.
Yeah. I'm just asking for a little help.
Yep. So stand with us, America. Help us make the change.
Our service members have your back. Do you have theirs? Who is protecting our protectors?
Yes.
Love
Yeah.
you.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.